Hey guys, uh, there is an older documentary video, whatever. It is titled "The Money Masters." I know a lot of you probably have already seen it, heard about it at least, maybe saw a few pieces of it or that kind of thing. But I tend to every now and then go over some of my old documentaries, real good stuff that I've held on to, um, and just kind of rewatch them as things unfold currently to kind of see how that plays with what I learned, years ago or whatever from a documentary. Now, this documentary was created, I believe, in 1996, and you can kind of tell looking at it. It's just it's not wasn't made anywhere in the 2000s, but it's still spot on. Now, his latest video, which came out maybe a year ago, if that, is called "The Secret of Oz," which is an odd name because it has to do with the Wizard of Oz, but he kind of makes you aware of some things about the yellow brick road, meaning the gold road. But anyways, it's a more up-to-date version with the solution as how to fix the crisis with having a private bank that is causing this economic collapse so that they can consolidate everything like they always do. Well, the Money Masters goes into a lot of detail too. Again, 1996, and even said, what's happening right now. He was saying then you're going to see the housing collapse, this and that. I'm like, man, I wonder when this was actually created, because I heard about it several years ago, watched it online, that kind of thing. But I actually just recently bought the DVD because I don't have the DVD quality. I watched it online, so I was like, I support this, and I want a good quality version of it to have on hand. I'm gonna go buy it. So I went and bought it about 2 weeks ago online. Came in, so I was just watching it again tonight. Last time I watched it was a long time ago and was online. Anyways, you're going to come to find out for hundreds of years of history, probably much longer than that, because he even goes back to the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, and it was a problem then. These international, banksters, money exchangers, the money masters, they do this over and over again. When a nation can print its own currency, not bonds, currency only, you are free. You will be prosperous. You will be the most prosperous nation on the earth. It can be paper fiat money, not even backed by gold, as long as the government is printing it. There's no bond attached to it where you have to sell off a bond and then collect interest to pay the interest on it. None of that. Just simply like what what's his name? President Lincoln did. And helped him actually win the war, and it worked so well they realized we need to keep this system in place. Well, the bankers didn't like that, and of course he got assassinated, and then they got their private bank shortly after. And it's been a battle every 20, 30, 40, 100 years, whatever length. It's a battle, and the bankers always pay off politicians to pass their laws, their bills that they write, giving them a central bank again, chartering it for X amount of years, 20 years, 40 years, whatever, and then once the charter expires, the smart people, the smart politicians try to fight it, and sometimes they're successful, and then the cycle continues back and forth. Well, in 1913, our Federal Reserve was created. Again, the same private bank that they always wanted. It has a 99-year charter, for God's sakes, which comes up in 2012. So in 2012, we have an opportunity to get rid of this turd if we can wake up our congressmen enough, and I hope that happens. However, if that does happen, as what this video explains many times, they're going to take us to war, big war. And it's interesting that Napoleon was supposed to be the first Antichrist, when actually Napoleon was against the international bankers, and they basically used and abused him, and he tried to fight against them and lost, basically, which is interesting. But there's a part here that's interesting that I want to play for you, because we've all just witnessed the largest trillions and trillions of dollars, largest money printing in the world's history just take place over the last couple of years. Of course, we all know it was given out to the big guys for the most part. Didn't help us down here on Main Street. And he kind of lays out, well, this is how it's going to go. And after watching this again, oh yeah, that's right. It's been a long time since I watched it. Didn't quite hit me until just now. What's going to happen next? The stock market's rising due to what they've just done by creating 0% interest loans, or 0.25% loans, basically nothing, to give to all the big bankers. They lend out all this money all over the place. which of course was supposed to stabilize our economy, which it didn't. And now, of course, the government, because they did that with all these trillions that they printed, the government had to issue bonds now to pay for those trillions that were given out. And then they're going to tighten up the money supply. They're going to stop the 0% interest rate, and they're going to raise the rates. They will raise the rates, which will cause the bonds to go way up in interest rates, which will cause the stock market to absolutely collapse. So we know now the next piece of this puzzle is that the stock market is going to collapse, and there's going to be a lot of pain on people. But gold and silver will do well, because one of the things these bankers do when they run out of the paper money thing that's backed by nothing, people catch on somewhat, they're pissed off. Okay, we'll go to a gold standard. And I've actually realized through watching this again, they've done that multiple times. Once they catch on, they relinquish some of the power, but they still have complete control. Yeah, you guys are right, we need to go to a gold standard. And before they pull that trigger, they scoop up all of the gold and silver, which many times they actually outlawed silver because there was so much of it around at the time. They realized if people have silver, we're not going to be able to pull this off as good as we'd like to, so we need to get a law passed through Congress to ban silver. And they did successfully. And then it was just money only, and I believe that was like in the late 1860s to sometime in the early 1900s. It was just gold only. There was no such thing as silver being monetary value at all. And here we are again in this day and age where it's been non-monetary since the late 1960s. We all know there's less silver out there than gold. Now, before, when they banned silver, it was the opposite. There was plenty of silver around. Gold was still hard to come by, for the most part. And the bankers controlled most of the gold. So if they got a currency backed by gold, which was our dollar at the time, backed by gold, it was their gold. Therefore, the price of their gold could be quite valuable. Which again, 1933, I think, or 35, whatever it was, gold confiscations from the populace. We'll give you $20 an ounce. Okay, thank you. You cannot own gold. A couple years later, it skyrockets to $40 or $35, an ounce, basically almost doubling. And again, who owned all that gold at the time? The bankers. So this is the next process that I know is going to happen. So yes, gold and silver this time, especially silver, because it's so short the supply, is going to cause it to skyrocket. I guarantee it. So I want to share this with you, and it's just a few minutes. It's very interesting, though.
To keep the debt small. It is interesting to note that in 1895, the Supreme Court had found a similar income tax law to be unconstitutional. The Supreme Court even found a corporate income tax law unconstitutional in 1909. As a result, Senator Aldrich hustled a bill for a constitutional amendment allowing income tax through the Congress. The proposed 16th Amendment to the Constitution was then sent to the state legislatures for approval. But some critics claim that the 16th Amendment was never ratified by the necessary 3/4 of the states. In other words, the 16th Amendment may not be legal. But the money changers were in no mood to debate the fine points. By October of 1913, Senator Aldrich had hustled the income tax bill through Congress. Without the power to tax the people directly and bypass the states, the Federal Reserve Bill would be far less useful to those who wanted to drive America deeply into their debt. A year after the passage of the Federal Reserve Bill, Congressman Lindbergh explained how the Fed created what we have come to call the business cycle and how they use it to their advantage.
To cause high prices, all the Federal Reserve Board will do will be to lower the rediscount rate, producing an expansion of credit and a rising stock market. Then, when businessmen are adjusted to these conditions, it can check prosperity in mid-career by arbitrarily raising the rate of interest.
So that's what I was just talking about. To cause high prices, all the Federal Reserve has to do will be to lower, he's calling it the rediscount rate. We know that today as the discount window, where these special friendly banks, right, the big banks that are basically probably the owners of the Federal Reserve, get to walk up. Remember, Morgan Stanley's two executives' wives were able to walk up to that window, right? He calls it the rediscount rate window. It's the discount window, able to secure $220 million from the Fed at near zero interest rate to go play with, and it was written up, that loan to them, if you guys lose and have a bad bet, we will cover 90% of your losses via the taxpayer. If you win, well, you win, you get it all. So, here we're seeing this again. To cause high prices, all the Federal Reserve has to do is to lower the discount rate window, producing an expansion of credit and a rising stock market. The expansion of credit, as I just mentioned a minute ago, was 2008, 2009, 2010. They gave out trillions and trillions and trillions in loans, of course, to their buddies, whatever. And now that all these businesses got a little taste of that, okay, we're used to that, they're going to pull the plug, as they always do, as this thing explains multiple times before this part of the movie, by the way, or this video, to cause the bust cycle to really kick in. And they'll scoop up all the assets, pennies on the dollar like they always do, etc. So, they produce an expansion of credit and a rising stock market. Then, when businessmen are used to these things and used to these conditions, in other words, all of us are used to this, it can then put that in check and keep the prosperity in mid-career by arbitrarily raising the rate of interest. Remember, the Federal Reserve sets the interest rates. And if you can get a loan at 0.25% if you're one of the boys, oh, that's great. Even the regular banks, if they're able to go to that Federal Reserve window, which a lot of them are, hey, we got all this money from the Fed at 0%. We're going to now lend it out at 8%. Of course, we have reserves, and we can loan out 10 times that value plus the 8%, of course. And then people get used to that, okay. And then all of a sudden, we've got all these bonds out there. China's getting worried. Japan's getting worried. All these people getting, hey, you guys have these bonds. We're a little worried about that. Well, don't be worried, because we're fixing to raise the rates big time. And if they do that, it will cause the stock market to completely collapse. Of course, gold and silver are going to rise exponentially. What you're seeing now is nothing, because the next step, according to the history that this thing shows, is that, yeah, we're going to go to the gold standard. We hear you guys. We understand. It's been since 1971 we got the gold standard. Yeah, we know there's some problems. We're going to fix it. We'll reinstate Glass-Steagall and this and that, and we'll go to a gold standard. But who's going to have all the gold in the world? The central banks of the world. So when Gordon Brown, I believe, in the early 2000s, sold off all of the UK or London, whatever, UK's gold for pennies on the dollar, 200, 250 an ounce, who did he sell it to, right? You can imagine who bought all that. That was his deal. You guys hooked us up with the 250 million. We're going to make you the next prime minister or whatever, right? We hooked him up, or the elite hooked him up, because they bought all that gold. Now they're going to sit back because they know way in advance the cycle, because they're the ones, it's their game. They know exactly what's going to happen. Price of gold and silver, mainly gold for them, is going to skyrocket out of control. And then they're going to, okay, it's backed by the dollar, dollar or other world currencies, countries' currencies are going to be backed by the, hey, the United States is backed theirs by gold. What about you guys? Oh, well, I guess we have to do that too. What about you guys? Yeah, we're going to have to do that too. Yeah, but there's not that much gold around. So the gold price will be, incredible. Of course, they may at that point realize, well, we got silver too, and since the last 50 years, silver's been demonetized, and there's not enough coming out of the ground now, less than gold, they're going to have to use gold and silver, I'm telling you, more than likely. So those of us holding on to gold and or silver, especially silver, we're going to be sitting pretty. This isn't about, becoming a banker ourselves and, hey, we know the game, so we're going to get on that bandwagon. This is protecting yourself. And you're going to find just protecting yourself by doing what they're doing, getting the gold and silver, you will be quite happy with the end result, I'm pretty sure. And you may not have to deal with the crisis that everyone else has to deal with. But let me just finish this, and that's all I got.
It can cause the pendulum of a rising and falling market to swing gently back and forth by slight changes in the discount rate, or cause violent fluctuations by a greater rate variation. And in either case, it will possess inside information as to financial conditions and advanced knowledge of the coming change, either up or down. This is the strangest, most dangerous advantage ever placed in the hands of a special privileged class by any government that ever existed. The system is private, conducted for the sole purpose of obtaining the greatest possible profits from the use of other people's money. They know in advance when to create panics to their advantage. They also know when to stop panic. Inflation and deflation work equally well for them when they control finance.
Congressman Lindbergh was correct on all points. What he didn't realize was that most European nations had already fallen prey to the central bankers decades or centuries earlier. But he also mentions the interesting fact that only 1 year later, the Fed had cornered the market in gold. This is how he put it, quote, "Already, the Federal Reserve banks have cornered the gold and gold certificates," close quote. But Congressman Lindbergh was not the only critic of the Fed. Congressman Lewis McFadden, the chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee from 1920 to 1931, remarked that the Federal Reserve Act brought about
a superstate controlled by international bankers and international industrialists acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure.
Notice how McFadden saw the international character of the stockholders of the Federal Reserve. Another chairman of the House Banking and Currency Committee in the 1960s, Wright Patman from Texas, put it this way.
In the United States today, we have in effect two governments. We have the duly constituted government, then we have an independent, uncontrolled, and uncoordinated government in the Federal Reserve System, operating the money powers which are reserved to Congress by the Constitution.
Even the inventor of the electric light, Thomas Edison, joined the fray in criticizing the...
All right, that's it for now. But you'll notice. Let me switch this back for the cartoon channel for the kids.
The ultimate nightmare for somebody in my position. The answer
1 second.
giving is people are going to go without our assistance.
Okay, so when I turned that video on, he was just talking about the 16th Amendment, how they instituted the income tax. Prior to the very early 1900s, there was no income tax. It was unconstitutional. They actually had a constitutional convention to add the 16th Amendment then, way after the Constitution was written. So, and they even said, well, it wasn't even ratified by all the states, so technically it's kind of not even legal, but it's in place, there ain't no getting out of it now. The bottom line is, all those taxes, income taxes, as well as, I know there's a video, I may have even put on my website the other day, someone might have posted it, that talked about like 99 taxes that 100 years ago didn't exist. Fishing tax, marriage tax, this tax, death tax, all these things didn't exist. These taxes go, including the income tax, all pretty much go to paying for those bonds, the interest on those bonds. We print money at the Federal Reserve. They say, before we hand out this money, you've got to give us bonds. And we will set the rate of those bonds. Okay, we'll go sell them out to our buddies in the world. And you know darn well who the mass majority of bondholders are. Other central banks in other countries that are controlled by the same people. So they want that interest payment off those bonds. But the interest is never printed by the Federal Reserve. They only print the principal. And even at that, most of it's digital dollars technically, so they're not even really printing it. But the interest that's owed on it is not printed. So there's a perpetual debt system here that can never be paid off. So when you hear, oh, we're fighting over $38 billion and, we got to do something about the deficit, it's impossible to do anything about the deficit. It's designed that way. There's nothing you can do. So I don't know if I did the video. I might have. I forget already. Or I just, again, posted on my website of another lady that put it in perspective. I think that was what happened. And it was either 438 billion or 483 billion. I forget the exact number, so let's just say 450 billion. Last year, 2010 alone, we, the people, paid approximately 450 billion just on the interest payment on those bonds that are out there. Those same bonds that don't even need to be in existence. If you can create $50 billion in bonds, you can create $50 billion in pure cash with no interest, no bondholder, no nothing. And that way you help the people. And the other way with the bondholders, you only help the rich people, because you're going to have all these bonds out there and then they're going to cry, hey, America, you got to make good on these, buddy. China's got a bunch, Japan, you guys got to make good on these bonds. What are you going to tell the world? You guys are the biggest hurt of all. No, we'll make good. And then you're going to have to pay off all that debt, which cannot be paid off anyways. So the income tax wouldn't even be necessary right now if we got rid of the Federal Reserve and just printed money, not even backed by gold, as he explains. And he's actually right. Printing money without printing a bond is the key. When doing that, you will have prosperity as long as they do that. Plain and simple. As long as your country has everything it needs within the country. If you have to import something from another country, that may be a problem, because that other country may say, hey, we don't know how much money you guys are printing. We don't know what your dollar's worth. It's not backed by anything because it's in your own country's currency. What are you going to give us if we are selling you oil or whatever if you don't have it in your country? Well, we could always say, well, that's fine. We have a lot of food here. We'll trade corn and wheat and this and that, and you can give us X amount of barrels of oil in exchange. That would work. You don't have to have these bonds with interest attached. So fortunately, in our country, we have everything we need here, including the oil, which we all know has been suppressed for the past 40 years on purpose, so they can usher in the New World Order, which will be nothing but a gigantic central bank, and then the whole world is in debt to these bankers, and it's game over. I really don't think that's going to take place. They may try to pull it off. It may last a very short period of time. It will collapse. Again, 2012, Mayan calendar, end of the Great Cycle. It's pretty much set in stone that this is not going to go through. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you guys and ask you to watch that video. It's free online, The Money Masters. And then the latest video from him is called The Secret of Oz. You could actually watch that one, as it touches on most of that stuff anyways. But man, it's a really good to refresh your memory, refresh everything, and watch our current system right now. What part of that timeline we are in, based off of the history he shows you. And again, we've just done the 0% interest rates. We are now going to tighten that money supply because everyone's screaming, hey, you can't print trillions. Oh yeah, okay, we'll stop. All those bonds have to get paid now. Austerity measures in the USA, unlike anything you've ever seen. Dollar collapse, everything. I mean, it's just in trouble. So, who knows how this is going to end. If they don't raise the interest rates and just leave it the way it is, I mean, I still don't see how it'll help or not help. Either way, we're just in deep trouble. So, anyways, I got to go. Talk to you guys later.